Hi everyone, welcome back to Sips for Change. As always, we're your hosts, Martin and Tammy, here to bring you exciting conversations about making events more planet and people conscious.
We have a special treat for you in store for today. The Paris 2024 Olympics have finally released their post-event reports. Yay! I've been so excited to review this with everyone.
Me too, Tammy. There's so much to unpack in this report, more than we can do justice in just one episode. So, we'll be splitting this discussion into two parts to dive deeper into both the wins and the areas for growth.
Well, I guess this will technically be part two and three, since, as some of you remember, last September we did a deep dive into the Paris 2024 Olympics sustainability commitments.
Oh, yeah, that's true. For those who might have missed it, no worries. We'll link the episode below.
And in case you don't feel like pressing pause to go tune into that episode right now in this moment, let's do a quick recap. To start, the Paris Olympics aim to be the most sustainable games in history. They strive to make some big moves to align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. One of their boldest claims was their goal to reduce their carbon footprint by half in comparison to the previous Summer Games.
Additionally, the organizers committed to making these games the most socially responsible yet, ensuring that the infrastructure is accessible to everyone regardless of ability.
With that said, let's jump into the results from the report and see where they wound up triumphing and where they still need room to grow.
Let's kick things off with some key numbers. The Paris 2024 Olympic and Paralympic Games were the largest sporting event ever organized by France. The Games welcomed 10,500 Olympic athletes and 4,400 Paralympic athletes across 329 Olympic events and 549 Paralympic events, selling 12.1 million tickets.
From an event planner's perspective, we all recognize that is a massive event.
Seriously, I think I would have been drinking a lot of coffee if I was involved in working on any of those events in the Olympics.
Well, the great thing is that programs like this, of this scale, mobilizes a large, tremendously large workforce. So you wouldn't be alone. There would be definitely a lot of people in the same boat as you, chugging gallons of coffee while they worked on the Olympics. And we know this because the organizers conducted an initiative to map out the number of jobs that were needed for the Games in 2019 as well as 2023. And then they estimated at the time that they would need at least 181,100 jobs across the events, tourism, and construction sectors.
And for those of you who followed the games, know that the events weren't just hosted within Paris. So we're talking about engaging people and communities all around the country of France.
Absolutely. And the report actually stated that 88% of the 4,700 suppliers that were mobilized for the games were French suppliers. This not only supports local French communities as well as the economy, but also leads to a reduction in the international transport of goods and services.
Yeah, on top of that, they made sure that all businesses, particularly the very small and medium sized enterprises, had access to bid on the games contracts. Actually, 83% of the suppliers used in the games were considered very small or medium sized enterprises. The game's social charter also included efforts to engage organizations focused on disability and social inclusion sectors.
One example of this was the successful contract with a consortium of 9 organizations that provided management and laundry services to the athletes' village, which helped employ 450 people and supported them in integrating disabilities with professional work.
I love that. It's great that they were able to have people with disabilities support the Athletes Village, considering that they were designed to be 100% accessible family homes after the games.
Agreed. And beyond the sheer scale of the event and its economic impact, the real question is, Did they succeed in making it the most accessible games yet? Let's dive into that a little bit more.
Sure. Let's start with a major highlight. As Tammy said, Paris 2024 set an ambitious goal to reduce their carbon footprint by more than half compared to previous games like London 2012 and Rio 2016. And guess what? They achieved a 54.6% reduction, emitting a total of 1.59 metric tons of CO2 equivalent.
That is super impressive, especially when you consider that previous games like Tokyo 2020 and Rio 2016 emitted an average of 3.5 metric tons of CO2.
Exactly. And a key part of their strategy was their approach to venue sourcing. They utilized 95% existing or temporary structures, minimizing carbon intensive construction, which in turn helped reduce the construction emissions to only 29% of their total footprint. Even the temporary structures used eco design centered around reusing or using low carbon materials to transform public spaces into beautiful and natural venues.
And in their report, they broke down their emissions and explained that these 1.59 metric tons of CO2 were unavoidable, with 53% of it coming from travel, which we all know from event planning, it's to be expected.
Mm.
However, they did invest in carbon sequestration projects to offset this emission.
On the topic of travel, transportation was a big focus of these games. 100% of the competition venues were accessible by public transportation. The organizers, supported by state and local authorities, even placed 27,000 temporary bicycle spaces around the Paris region.
And according to the report, 87% of spectators use public transport or bicycles to get to the events. When you consider that they sold, what, 12.1 million tickets to the games, 87% is a very large number.
Absolutely. That's definitely a great way to help reduce some of the travel emissions. I also read that 5% of the spectators took advantage of the 415 kilometers or approximately 257 miles of cycling roads they developed to link all of the Olympic venues in the Paris region.
And 5% maybe seems like a small number in comparison to the larger numbers that we're listing here. But again, that's about 600,000 of people and potentially cars that were off the road because they took bikes. So less congestion equals less emissions. So gotta love that.
I love the idea of thousands of people biking to the games. But let's be honest, Tammy, I'd probably be out of breath even before I reach the stadium entrance. Maybe I'll just stick to clapping for the cyclists.
You and me both. Now, we know that sustainable travel is just one piece of the puzzle, right? Another key area of impact, energy.
Oh, of course. Right from the beginning, Paris 2024 made a bold commitment to power the games on renewable energy, which they did. 100% of the electricity used in the games were supplied by wind and solar production sites within France, and 98.4% of the energy requirements came from those electrical grids, making little use of generators only during emergencies.
Additionally, EDF, the electric supplier for the games, even developed innovative temporary solar generation projects, which included an 800 square meters, or approximately 8,600 square feet, of photovoltaic panel shade and a floating solar plant on the Seine that is mobile and can be dismantled.
That's super cool.
Right?
Now, we know that in major events, travel and energy are the two biggest contributors to carbon emissions. But as a reminder, Tammy, what's the third one?
You just want the foodie to talk about the food and beverage stuff, don't you?
Well, I just thought you'd enjoy highlighting what Paris 2024 did with their catering.
You're not wrong. I really love their attempts in this area. They redistributed 300 tons of food products to people suffering from insecurity. And 40% of their core meals purchased by the general public during these games were vegetarian, which is twice the average ratio for the general public at an event. However, the athletes' meals and the drinks and snack sections were not factored into the carbon impact assessments. So, this is probably one of the main areas for improvement in the future.
Hmm. That being said, they did achieve some other great metrics around the catering aspects of things, such as the 52% reduction in single-use plastic in drink supplies by weight compared to London 2012, and 80% of spectators brought their own water bottle to the venues.
The analysis they conducted actually saw a significant drop in drink sales, particularly water, which they attributed to the installation and the availability of free water fountains on site. A field survey of the spectators found that it was the event communications that triggered them to bring a water bottle.
See, you and I have always talked about how important communications are. And if Paris 2024 can get 80% of their attendees to bring a water bottle, there's no reason even planners can't do the same for conferences. Small
E-
change can lead to big impact.
exactly. And while today was all about the environmental side, next week we'll be shifting gears to something just as crucial, social impact. How well did Paris 2024 follow through on its commitments to accessibility, inclusion, and community engagement? What can future events learn about their approach? So don't miss it next week. We'll break all of that down.
Thanks, Tammy. And thank you all for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, as usual, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss out on our sustainability deep dives. Thanks for sipping with us, and we'll see you for part 2 next week.
Until then, keep making conscious choices one sip at a time. Bye.